Lesson 2, Monitoring Storage Activity. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to determine which disk metrics to monitor, identify the metrics in vCenter Server and RESX Top, and demonstrate how to monitor disk throughput. Performance charts and space utilization. The overview charts on the Performance tab shows the usage for details on a data store, as you can see right here. Several charts are available by default. You can look at space utilization, and you can look at the space utilization by top 5 virtual machines, or you can look at a one-day summary. About disk capacity metrics. To identify disk-related performance problems, determine the available bandwidth on your host and compare it with your expectations. vSphere includes key metrics to determine available disk bandwidth and capacity. We have disk throughput, our latency for the device and the kernel, number of aborted disk commands, number of active disk commands, and the number of active commands queued. Monitoring disk throughput with the vSphere web client. You can look at advanced disk performance chart metrics such as disk read, disk write, and disk usage. As you can see right here, this one is the host. We have the read rate, and it's giving us an average of kilobits per second. Our usage on this one will be the red one. So like right here is the graph for that. And our write rate will be this orange looking one. See right there is an example of one. We can look at all these with our reports in the web client. Monitoring disk throughput with RESX Top. This is the command line version. As you can see, what it's got outlined here, our reads and writes on our HBA adapters, and then our megabyte read and writes. And this is just when we're on the command line, we can run RESX Top, and then you hit D, and we'll see disk parameters. Here's an example of a disk throughput of RESX Top. Again, we have our writes, our megabytes read, our megabytes written, our average. That's our disk average of commands, our kilobyte average of commands, how many commands a second, reads a second, our queue average, and our gigabyte average. Now, if you want to look at the view by virtual machine, you can just type V. Remember, we hit D to get this view. When we type V for virtual machine, we'll get this view, and it shows us the virtual machines, and then we have their metrics here. We can also monitor disk latency with the web client. Disk latency is the time it takes to complete an I/O request and is most commonly measured in milliseconds. There are several types of counters to measure disk latency: the physical device latency counter and the kernel latency counters. And you see in each one of these we have kernel latency counters and our physical device read latency. And there's our device of the disk that we're using. And here's what it looks like when we use RESX Top to monitor latency. We have our average latencies right here. We can monitor commands and command queuing. The performance metric is the number of active commands. The name of this metric in the web client is the commands issued, and RESX Top is ACTV. And we'll look at the number of commands queued, and these are I/O operations that require processing. It's called in web client queue command latency. It's QUED in RESX top. Here's a disk latency and queuing example in RESX top. We can see we have normal VM kernel latency. If we hit our U button, then we get a more defined, a more detailed view of our devices here. And we can see we have a queuing at the device 2. Excuse me. It's more detailed. This is, let me clarify this. This is the device name, and up here is their HBA. So we can see this at the adapter level looks normal. But right here when we look, we have queuing going on at the device. This could be queuing at the SAN. Could be queuing at the device because we talked about the adapters do it. But generally you would see that up here, but it still could be because remember the device driver will queue it. That will be what happens here. This would be the device driver. The adapter will queue it right here. So you need to look at both to kind of get a whole feel of what's going on. And again, we hit D right here to see this view, and U right here. Monitoring severely overloaded storage. These are where we'll see aborted commands, and this is a sign that the storage hardware is overloaded and it's unable to handle the request given the host expectations. The disk command aborts performance counters, and ABRTS/S is the aborts per second, and RESX top counter, they show the number of aborted commands. And we can set us up a chart. As you can see right here, we want to see the commands that were aborted. About data store alarms. We can configure alarms such as right here. We have a trigger. Data store capacity is increased, discovered. If a file or data is copied to a data store, deleted, moved, or a local file is created, we can create a trigger. After we have our trigger, like this is disk usage, we'll give it a warning. This is a triggered alarm. We have a warning on this alarm that says our data store usage is getting too high. You should now be able to determine which disk metrics to monitor, identify the metrics in vCenter server and RESX top, and demonstrate how to monitor disk throughput.